I'm Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
I'm Il Ninja Cupcake. She, her.
I'm Jareka. I use she, her.
And I'm Air. I use he, him.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decision to retrieve the treasure of wisdom. Games continue to be played, stories continue to be told, and I would love to know what was your favorite thing in today's segment of Dungeon Crawl.
Ooh, call on me. Let me go.
You've been hyping it up so much that I am, like, it has to be you first. I cannot, the anticipation will kill me.
Okay, well, I usually go for that juicy C team action because you can't have your bread without your C team.
Right. It's good action.
But brace yourself, I'm going somewhere else.
Ooh, I'm braced.
We're off the rails.
So, I have been kicking around on Twitter, and I have seen this hashtag D&D in a castle.
Ooh.
Did you guys see this?
I seen only one tweet from it, from the man himself,
Crawford.
the DM, Jeremy Crawford. Yeah, I saw him tweet about it was really fun, and that's pretty much all I know.
So basically what it was, it looked like a lot of people that are like the who's who of D&D, Jeremy Crawford as one of them, but they went and legit. It's from Casey at D&D in a castle. We just started D&D session 0 last night. A storm was rolling through and all the massive floor-to-ceiling windows blew open as a driving rain pelted the castle. Jeremy Crawford welcomed us to Barovia in dramatic style. And there's
it doesn't
pictures.
get better than that, does it?
No,
Not
it's
really.
like a legit castle with one of those long tables with big fancy chairs. So this made me think, if you could take your party, regardless of how you play, if you could just transport everybody to a specific location and play D&D somewhere, would it be a castle? Would it be a dungeon?
Man, that's
would it
a
be
really
lake?
good question.
Oh, this is a lot of meat on this bone, Cupcake. You came ready to play ball.
On a boat. Motherfuckers, we're on a boat. That's my answer.
Oh, that's very
On a
good.
motherfucking boat.
Motherfucker. On a motherfucker.
I mean, that would
Yeah.
be very thematic for Team F, too.
It would
Yes.
be. Yeah. I want to meet Zephyr in real life. Make it happen.
There you go. Well, I have some younger siblings, actually. I could get a 12-year-old boy to come on board and be our Zephyr.
When I toss him, does he fly?
He does not,
time.
actually.
Well, then.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Technically.
He's flying until he starts falling.
Isn't there's that philosophical argument that if you can chart something, like it's progress. So you throw something, it's like a bell curve. And if you can chart its progress in each individual spot, was it 1, ever moving, and 2, was it not flying?
Zeno's paradox. Yeah, you
there
can
you go.
only ever keep moving halfway towards a tree. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, I also do a book read at time.
Who else is going to answer this question?
I know philosophers.
On Discord and Roll20 with my friends.
You're such a good boy.
Well, congratulations, Era. I can offer you a seat at that table this Sunday and every Sunday, both before and after this one for the last year.
This is going to be really silly. I kind of have this fascination with Biltmore in, was it North Carolina? One, because it's an amazing, like, it looks very, I want to say like French castle, but then they have these amazing gardens. So almost like a maze. I would love to do that.
I have a puzzle of the Biltmore.
Do you really?
I put it together. I take it apart.
So, if I could play D&D anywhere, it would have been in the Stream of Many Eyes Waterdeep set. That would have been cool, right? Because then it's the same thing. You have all the stuff and tools that you need, but you're like in Waterdeep. Yeah, you're in Waterdeep. You're like super immersed. The immersion level couldn't be higher unless you'd walk through a portal into a fantasy world. Like my novel.
And can I throw out there, in addition to this, I am late to this party, but I have to wish you a slightly early, when this comes out, happy D&D anniversary to the F list for your 1 year. And
Oh my goodness.
Pour one out for Talon.
right,
Yeah. Rest in
Malvidian-
peace. You're not dead, but you're dead to
Ripping
me.
pepperonis, Talon.
that's right.
Pepperoni. Yeah.
We got you, Holmes.
Good
May
boy,
you
too.
stay dead for. No, I'm
Whoa.
just.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Did we bury
Harsh.
the body deep enough? That's always the question.
Not even.
No,
I
we
can
love
always
you.
bring
kill
him back.
yet.
Now we love you. You're a good boy.
Yes.
He will pop
True
up in
resurrection.
Bert's bed somewhere.
There you go.
If he's lucky.
But we
Indeed.
were, I think we briefly talked about with D&D anniversaries, is there a gift for each specific year?
I think, like, first year anniversary, right, is something practical.
Parchment.
Parchment is good.
Parchment's not practical, Drake.
Well, it is in
Totally
the
is.
worlds of D&D.
We're not in the world of D&D. We're a D&D group.
Do you mean things you can actually give a player and not character gifts?
Well, I mean, like, the idea here, right, is similar to a like a wedding anniversary, but for a D&D group. So I'm just like, what's a D&D 1 year anniversary? You know what a 1 year anniversary is? I think I have a good idea.
A ring of protection.
That's moving quickly.
A 1 year anniversary could be like a mini, right? Because now you've had the character for a year, it's actually worth getting a mini.
Congratulations,
That's
you've
true.
not died. It won't last
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you've had the character for a year, it may be actually worthwhile to get a mini now. If you've had the character, if you're starting a campaign and you buy a mini, you are making a bold decision, my friend. You are making a real commitment there to something that is quite ephemeral.
It's true.
Oh, wait. So would this maybe fall under the lines of having, I don't know, your character commissioned by one of your favorite artists?
A character commission. Now that is a 1 year anniversary. 2 years is the mini, because the mini is really
Yeah.
quite a hefty commitment, right?
Especially to an online game. I'm just tapping it on the screen, sadly.
Right,
It doesn't-
exactly.
yeah.
So it's
like an
but
amiibo.
No. Okay. All right, Air. The darkest timeline over there. I think it's more like something you sit on your desk and you like look at it and you go, oh yeah, that was a lot of fun, that campaign. It's sad we all died to that Hundar at the last second, but that's how it goes.
Spoilers.
Well, now I've seen my death. I'm making peace with it.
There you go.
Taking
You've
a
read
while.
your minority.
Hold, please.
Suffer down with me.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh, never. I had the pleasure of playing Warhammer 40k, the RPG, which was a blast. Not in small part because the DM had a really awesome premise. I recommend this game. It's pretty great, especially if there's people or persons of one or many that know how to play the game, or at least how to set up a character, because the characters
Always
can be a
helpful.
little complicated, but once you get into it, I think it goes well. So we had the rogue trader captain, a tech priest, other emperor priest guy, something else. Oh boy. A psyker.
You're all on your own here. I know nothing about
Yes,
Warhammer.
And myself, I played the navigator. So there's some heroes from the tactical game that are ported over that can appear in the RPG, but it's a storytelling game. Game master sets up a scenario and then you tell them what you do about it. So we were on a station basically in space, and we were supposed to fix an issue that they were having where Chaos was effing up part of their ship. At the start, we were presented with 3 doors, and we had to pick which door, and the DM rolled on a table to figure out what would, when the door opened, what would come out. And since we were dealing with chaos, it changed. Like, it wasn't always logically connected to the space before it. And then whenever we opened a door and walked through and progressed, there would be a new set of 3 doors, and the DM would roll. So it was very interesting, new and exciting things. We weren't always on the ship. Sometimes we were other places, like in like a dungeon world, or we were actually in Pokemon for a while.
Yes.
We were in this other strange world, and then we were actually in Alien, and that was probably the best part because there's like a Tides of Chaos kind of mechanic with the Psyker, where if they use their power, they have to roll on a table and then weird shit happens. And she rolled on the table, and the thing that came up was that she would swap bodies with someone in the room. Well, she swapped bodies with the alien, and we're talking xenomorph.
Oh boy.
So that was super exciting and fun and lovely,
Oh
and we
boy.
won. So it was a pretty good game. I thought it was a great premise. Yeah, super fun. So give it a try if you ever get the chance.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Did you get blood for the blood god?
No.
Skulls for the skull throne?
Mm-mm.
That's everything I know about Warhammer.
You did neither of those things.
Okay. It
Yeah.
sounds like Ready Player One-ish. Like it's like all the best like pop culture IPs.
Well,
like,
that's how the game master played it. So like it
Yeah.
was real good. Like
That's
I
fun.
really enjoyed that. And you know, not every game of Warhammer 40K, the RPG edition, is going to do that. I'm sure there's some games that are played very, very straight and very like, for the Imperium, we must sacrifice everyone but ourselves. But yeah, I really enjoyed this game because it had those little twists and those little references, and the mechanic of the fact that we were dealing with chaos, and it was, you know, it wasn't sure what was beyond every door until the DM rolled. I thought that was really, really cool. And my second favorite part, in one of the rooms, there was a cube puzzle, for lack of a better word, and the DM actually had a puzzle game. Like, and he put it out on the table, and then we had to solve it, and he was timing us, and I loved it.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, and we got it, so it was great. And it was
Nice.
also great because it pertained to my character, so it helped my character see how the right way to go in the maze. So I really enjoyed that part very much.
that sounds super awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Roll call. We are going to be discussing the role of Kinkus.
Wow. The role of Kenku's?
I like your Kenku attitude.
I like your Kenku attitude.
We're not kank shaming.
We're not
Oh,
kink
never.
shaming.
Oh boy.
You like to get all up in that plumage. We don't judge.
So a certain very special Kinku had a
Like to
very
get down in
beautiful
the down. That's okay.
send off this week.
Rails, where are they? I have no idea.
So a very special Kinku had a very special send off when this episode came out in the past. And so we thought it might be an appropriate time to look at Kinkus as a player option and as a DM option and kind of go over, you know, the difficulties and the pros and cons of using this kind of race in your games a little more.
Be specific, though.
Well, I don't want to because spoilers.
Well, I think we can say, like, in Critical Role in the current
okay.
season,
Well,
Kiri is a Kenku NPC voiced by Matt Mercer, and it is, I would say, a master class in playing a Kenku, because for those that aren't in the know, Kenku are a race that has been cursed, and they cannot generate new or novel ideas or thoughts or expressions. So it makes for a very interesting role-playing scenario, because you cannot do anything new. This is normally borne out RP-wise in speech, where they cannot actually say anything. All they can do is mimic things they've heard before. So they are reliant on using parts of speech or sounds or whatnot in order to, or actions, movement, in order to relate what they're trying to say. So, and Matt has done a great job picking up on things various characters have said in the presence of this NPC, and having that NPC who's essentially a child of this race use those phrases and terms to get their point across, and it's very endearing. It's always good to give the party a puppy and watch them flounder.
So we thought we were going to do a roll call about Kinkus, and so we were just going to go a little bit into the whole deal about having a Kinku in your party. We're going to answer some Kinku related questions, and we're going to do a improve your improv on Kinkus, and we're going to talk about Kinkus.
Gonna get
We're gonna-
kinky with it.
No.
Can we get a little kinky with it? Maybe not the whole way, but just a little.
Yeah. Brown leather, not black.
As everyone can tell, Jay is the voice of reason. He keeps us in line. Otherwise,
Yeah.
this would
Otherwise,
have a
yeah.
mature rating.
Oh
It
yeah.
already does. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. This is a podcast for adults.
Using adult language.
You have been warned. Starting this off, one of the things that I really thought was kind of cool about Kenku's one was that I guess your feathers are a little tied when it comes to how to RP this character, but you can finagle it a little bit with backstory. And usually, I don't know about you guys, but I have to start with a name for a character. And Kenku's are a little bit different because if you are only exposed to things that you've heard and you can mimic, that to me argues that that is how your Kenku would be named. But I have seen on our friend Maz on their Twitter, they were helping name a Kenku bard and they were coming up with some really cool punny names because I'm a sucker for a pun. It was cool to see that that's the way that they were going to go with it. So Kenkus, you can make them your own.
So I have to admit that I don't have a lot of experience being super Kenki. But I did have a Kenku character that I was very, very, very fond of that has morphed into an Aarakocra. So maybe we should talk about the differences between the Kenkus and the Aarakocras.
Very good point.
The difference would be fly speed. Kinkus don't have a fly speed, and then the mimicry limitation, it requires them to, they can't communicate standard. So Aarakocra is what you want to play when you want to play a bird person. Kinku is what you want to play when you want to challenge yourself.
When you want to be a bird.
By playing a bird person.
Yeah. It's a whole different ball game.
Hey, you're DMJ. I have a question for you. And actually, you know what? All three of you, you DM, as an inner bird person, D&D and Wizards of the Coast have established that Kenkus have very strong mimicry, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Do they establish where that ends? Can you say, my mimicry is like 12 out of 10, ergo, I can mimic this handwriting? Or is it only auditory? Because I've not seen it specified.
Well, no, actually, I do think they have the ability in the creature description to use forgery tools.
Right.
I do think they are actually given forgery tools, and they have the ability to impersonate like a guard or something like that. So if you're trying to pass off as a guard, that's definitely that's as intended for Kinku. So they are most certainly that sort of character.
Yeah, it's here. It's actually they have a a racial feature called Expert Forgery. You can duplicate other creatures' handwriting and craftwork. You have advantage on all checks made to produce forgeries or duplicates of existing objects. So while they can't invent new things, they're really, really good at making duplicates of things that they have an example of. That's pretty neat.
And Kinkus, like most good things in Dungeons and Dragons, date all the way back to the Fiend Folio, which is the first masterwork of Dungeons and Dragons. It created so many of the monsters that we still use to today, and it coalesced a lot of monsters that had been created in the magazines and things like that into a single source. So the Kinku are originally in the Fiend Folio as a monster. They appeared in the Monsters Compendium, and then they went to the Monster Manual 3. In 4th edition, they were in Monster Manual 2, and then finally in 5th edition, they are introduced as a playable race in the actual game itself. Kinku, according to the mythos, so to speak, are kind of malicious creatures cursed because of their evil hearts. They're thieves and scoundrels, similar to the way that you see Drow treated as sort of innately evil. But Kinkus are a little less like to the extreme end of things like Drow are.
Well, I have been told that you're not always bad, you just might be RP'd that way.
The original alignment of a Kinku is actually neutral, so I guess really, they're not actually evil, so to speak, so much as they're just again, it's a monster manual, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything in there is something that you have to kill. A lot of these things are just sort of things to populate the world and make it feel more fantasy. But the original Kinku looks remarkably similar to how it looks today. This is one of those arts that actually stuck around mostly intact. I'll post it into the chat here, but
If it ain't broke,
this
don't
is
fix
the
it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just a bird boy. It's just a standing bird with arms. Like I would say that this kinku is, because of the arm structure and the way the wings are on the back, it kind of almost looks Aarakocra-ish. I would say that the modern kinku has a little less like wing
Orbit.
prominence, so
Yeah.
to speak. Yeah.
Is it the case that kenku are generally corvids and Aarakocra can be more like raptors?
That's kind of the way I felt about it.
I absolutely get that impression the same as you.
Well, and if I can be a little nerdy and ornithological here, the picture
Of course.
that
That's the way I like you.
I'm getting all orny up in here.
Oh no!
Yeah, baby. The pictures that I've seen of kenkus, they don't necessarily have arms. They use their wings and like their outer primary feathers, more kind of like the hand business. In this picture, the beak there we go. I think I've seen that picture. I don't remember if it was a rogue or a druid, but the original kenku picture, the beak is not right. It's more of a raptor type beak as opposed to that sweet corvid action.
Yeah.
So I guess to differentiate between the Aarakocra and the kinku, they took kinku more down the raven route, whereas they kept the Aarakocra in the raptor domain.
Yeah, I've always thought of the Aarakocra as, which I've always pronounced it Arakoa. I'm wrong,
It's
obviously.
the wow. It's the wow.
It's gotta be.
Yeah.
I've always thought of them as like more regal, more almost like eagle-ish.
I think they are. I think that's the idea. I was just looking over their page in D&D Beyond as well. And yeah.
I think there's only one picture. I mean, there's one picture that I've seen, and I don't know if I've seen any other pictures of Aarakocra beyond the one that's
Eagerly
embedded in the
It's like a monk or something like that.
zeitgeist.
Yeah, just sky wardens. They're protectors of the skies. They do have bird-like mannerisms, but they are fully humanoid. They can speak common fluently, along with Aarakocra and Orin. But yeah, I think that's the idea. They're supposed to be more ostentatious, where the Kenku definitely seem to be more of the lower run of the bird humanoid races. It looks like they might have a tough time. They're always portrayed as kind of like, warlocks.
They're the underbirds.
Yes, yeah, they're on the lower end of the pecking order.
Ooh, shit.
Oh my
Them good
word.
puns.
Yes, so the primary difficulty of a kinku is that roleplay challenge, that hurdle, so to speak, of their limited speech. And really, it comes down to a few different options as far as your DMing goes. Because, here's the thing. For me, it comes down to basically you have to make one of three choices. Either the kinku has lived a full and rich life and basically knows every word in existence from somebody and can effectively say whatever it wants, because over the course of your life, you hear people say things.
I actually think, though, that might not be possible for them. Like the mimicry, I don't actually know. I guess that would come down to the DM, but if they say like an entire sentence in broken, 5 different broken voices with coming out each different word, that's one thing. But I think to actually create a sentence or a statement from those individual words might be an act of novel creation, which would again go against their curse. So I actually don't know if you could do it. Just throwing it out there. I'm not 100% sure.
I was going to say, most kinku use a combination of overheard phrases and sound effects to convey ideas and thoughts. So they can definitely combine phrases.
Okay, so they can do like synthesis, but they can't do more
But
than
this
that.
gets to what I was saying
Yeah.
with the 3 different types. So there are 3 ways to approach it. One is the kinku has heard. I mean, like, if you imagine a kinku in their teens, they've heard everything. They know they can make whatever sentence they want out of their thing. And at that point, the curse is not a curse. So then the second way is where you treat it basically like Matt did, like the bird was born yesterday. And as soon as the game started, that's the only time that they've ever learned language. So Matt was taking down notes, and then going forward, they had whatever phrases they had been fed by the guru. But, you know, that's kind of strange to me that this Kiri didn't have any phrases at all in the engine except for what the Mighty Nine fed her. But it was, you know, it was good role play, and it was interesting to hear it all fed back. The third way, my sort of idea for Kenku is that they have a period of time where they can retain a phrase, and then it's gone. If I ran a Kenku, I would run it as if each day or each week it starts a cycle, and then I can retain phrases during that cycle that I know will be useful, but I'm losing those phrases in a little bit of time. Otherwise, after a certain point, the curse is not a curse anymore.
It's getting very Memento. Yes,
D&D edition.
Absolutely. I was thinking Memento as well, Draga.
For me, the whole interesting challenge that this provides is that your speech is limited. And if you can overcome that challenge within a few sessions of play, then the challenge is not that interesting. Another fun thing might be to maybe to give yourself like a list of words that your Kenku has committed to memory, and those are the ones it knows. So like look up the 25 most common words. But I think that interesting things happen in D&D when you impose restriction.
Can I make a very flimsy connection to my love, my life, the druid? There's a sort of a mechanism in druid wild shape where you can only wild shape into animals that the druid has seen before. And I think this I'm sure some other classes kind of do this, but I think it's really interesting, like Jay said, when you have to think about, okay, where has my druid been? You know, where has my Kenku been? This thing that they're displaying is a direct result of their, you know, immediate experience. And so it's gonna depend on what they've seen, where they've been, who they've interacted with. And I think it gets into backstory in a very specific sort of way. I love it.
Well, I think you both, I mean, from my experience, very, very right. When you're going to play a Kenku, you have a couple of different things and ways to breach all of this. My first one that I rolled, I came into it in a one shot, and I had to think, I was like, crap, how am I going to do this? And I was like, okay, she might speak in sounds. So she rolled like a really high perception check and then had to try and relay to the party without really having any vocal skills exactly what she saw. So she was mimicking sounds. And then it was oh crap, she probably has heard a couple of phrases, so it's going to be really limited. So usually when I play a Kenku, what I'll do is I'll flip over one of my character sheets, and then when some sort of phrase that may have stood out is said, whether or not it would have been relevant at all, I write it down. Because from my experience with birds, they don't pick up what you want them to pick up.
Snack.
Yes.
A whole snack.
My birds have taken to saying, I love you, snack. This is not something I have ever said to them. They put together words. Or you're a snack. That's one thing. If I make them mad, they yell, "You're a snack."
That's ominous.
That's how I come. That's how I come on to people. But now I understand that it is in a mad context. So that's not what I was thinking at all.
So you can do it that way. The last Kenku that I rolled was a Grave Domain Cleric. And the backstory in this was a little...
No, what was your first druid's name, though? Sorry.
I had Kettle Bubble and Board Creek.
Oh, I love it.
They were
favorite.
sounds.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, the last one, I think I gave a more traditional name to, because supposedly this Kenku had been taken in and trained by this cleric that would prepare bodies for burial. So he had like his Kenku name or it's their Kenku name and their normal name. So it was different because the vocal skills may have been a little more advanced, but it was still only limited to things that they may have heard.
Mm-hmm. And how you've described it, I believe, is that their name isn't Kettle Bubble. It's the sound that a bubbling kettle makes,
Exactly.
Right? So it's more of an onomatopoeia. And Like we can say, "Oh, tell me about kettle bubble," excuse me, but it should be, "Tell me about."
Yeah.
Air did it way better.
Yeah. Or like with Board Creek, when they would ask you what your name was, it would be.
So my only Kenku who was transformed into an Aarakocra, his name was Rain on Tideswell. So as Air put it one day, his name is.
Yeah. There are people that will play Kenkus and they will literally just have sound files hotkeyed on their desktop, and that's how they play them.
Oh, that's great.
Very clever.
That's cool.
Express like an emotional palette or whatnot. I've played one Kenku in the Haley Day adventure that Haley ran, who was a druid of the land. He was from the Arctic because he was a Canadian druid, Canada being just north of Faerun, and his name was Chester Fields. And yeah, he was fun, and it was definitely a challenge because you're chomping at the bit to say this thing, and now you have this extra layer of, but how am I going to do that?
You have to take good notes to play Kenku.
Yes, I do want to say that I'm interested to see what a murder of Kenku would be like, because I think it would essentially be like a living Markov chain. It would just be, here's a completely nonsensical statement that's now being repeated but slightly altered by this creature. Like, I think that would be very interesting to see.
You could only change one word in the chain, and
Yeah,
it had to have been one
exactly.
you've had to hear before.
Yeah, like all Kenku to Kenku conversation is just broken telephone game.
I want to do this so bad.
A whole party of Kenku.
Oh god.
Jay would hate his life.
No one can get an idea across to anyone.
The whole 3 hours.
You'd have to have like one human in there so that they could all steal
Yeah.
phrases from that one human.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like,
Just have the NPCs around.
Yeah.
Like, no, it would literally be you'd have to start in a town, and then everybody would have to walk around and talk to different NPCs, and then take dedicated notes and like give
No,
phrases.
it's just awakened mind squirrels.
No, because that's the
Where they
thing is
get their
like
phrases from.
even they don't have a language, so like even in their minds, you have to have a language to do that. Like, ooh.
Oh, wait, if they were to do Awakened Mind, I'm imagining it would be like the wolves from Twilight, where you just see what the other ones see.
Ooh.
ooh, you can read and write Common and Norn, but you can speak only using your Mimikyu trait. Okay, so they can write. So if push comes to shove, you could have basically a bunch of Kenku constantly sketching out letters and diagrams to one another too.
I am positive that a Kenku clan would communicate in Thieves' Camp.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
That makes sense.
I feel like that's a thing that would happen.
And is that hand talking or shorthand?
So
Talking.
Thieves' Cant and Druidic are kind of up to the DMs or the DM's choice, dealer's choice, so to speak. I generally think of Thieves' Cant like hobo signs, where they are little markings you leave on like a building that let you know, like, easy mark. This place gives a lot of food away.
That's good.
Yeah, I think of Thieves' Cant sort of along the lines of like hobo signs, and I think of Druidic to be kind of more like a proto language kind of thing. Like it's a very ancient language, but I think of Druidic is sort of like and I would imagine that Druidic does not have a written form. I would say that Druidic probably, I mean, it might, according to the rules, but I would think of Druidic as almost like a purely verbal language. That seems kind of interesting to me.
I think
Could Thieves' Cant be the written form of Druidic?
I've seen some interesting interpretations of this, like in the C-Team game when they were traveling to Nemazir, which had to do with Walnut, Amy T. Falcone's druid character's backstory. There's a sign to the town, and then there was like a wreath or something, or like a twist of holly that was contorted in such a way that she's like, oh, that's druidic. Like, having that plant in that configuration means this. I thought it was really interesting. I've also seen Thieves' Cant done as like almost like the tone, like varying your tone or varying your body language. It's like this imperceptible shift. Like when I say this word but I blink with my right eye, it means something. And because rogues are so perceptive, they pick up on these subtle nuances that mean something different than what's actually being said.
Dale Kingsmill, I think it is. she did a whole video on Thieves Can't, and I guess I'll link it, but she has an entire code, like a coded language conversation in her notes, and the Thieve player gets it too. And so if they ever want to talk to a source, they can go through this coded language conversation.
That's cool.
So it's like, hey, have you seen the game? And that's like, I have a job. And then the other person replies, I have seen the game, but I'm not sure what time the next game's on. That's like, okay, how much is the job worth? And the other person's like, oh, it's about 7. And then they'll note 700 gold or something like that.
That's next level. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
but that was, to me, it was like, okay, this sounds really cool in theory, but in practice it would be a lot of work and very slow.
yes, and it's also only benefiting one player, but that is something that would make that player feel extra cool and like super happy they picked the rogue. I think we're generally starting to talk more about like language and how that affects things in D&D.
Well, actually, I think, Air, you had an idea.
I did.
To go through a scenario with Kenku and maybe just kind of show how that can be played off.
So I was thinking, now that we've talked a bit about this and answered some questions about Kenku, maybe we could try to do an Improve Your Improv, and I am going to, despite my better judgment, try to play a Kenku for all of you to interact with. So help me gods. So in this scenario, Jay and I have agreed to co-DM this. So it's 2 DMs for the price of none. I promise you'll get less than you paid for. And yeah, I am wondering, Cupcake and Jerica, would you like to play your lovely characters, Loxley and Bana?
Yeah.
Yes. And I am going to set a scene, and I will lead you in, if as it were. Having made your deal with the local constable to track down the source of the increased rate in crime that the town has been seeing as of late, you get a lead that there is a bartender in the Windmill Creek Inn that might have some information to lead you to the source of this criminal ring that's been operating here in town. As you approach the door and it creaks open slowly, you see 2 figures standing behind the bar. One seems to be a surly-looking dwarf, lawn-haired, gray, the long gray beard braided, and the other is a somewhat shadowy figure, somewhat skulking around behind the bar. You can barely see them due to their diminutive stature, but as you walk in and your eyes focus on the lowered amount of illumination, you can see an elongated sharp beak, yellow smart eyes, and black feathers atop their head. And you walk up to the bar, and surprisingly, this black-feathered creature looks up to you and says, "Drinks are on the house." And then the dwarf looks over at him, surly as is his nature, and says,
Was that my voice?
"That was your voice."
Was that
Okay.
my voice?
All right. What's your character's name?
He's Geronimo.
Okay.
Or,
And Mike. Okay. All right.
Ah!
Yeah, I gotcha. All right. Great. No, they're not, you daft asshole. Fucking drinks are never on the house. Don't even listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You pay for your drinks.
More cursing, please.
I'm here for the cursing and dwarvish.
Sit on the fucking stools and order your goddamn drinks and then get out of my bar. If you're not
So
paying
I'm-
customers.
I'm gonna pop my Glavian
paying customers.
immediately from inactive to active mode and attempt
shit.
to intimidate this bar.
You like popping the wings?
I'm gonna be like, I drink for free. Your friend just said so.
Why don't you drop a
I drink
descriptor
for
on this
free.
action?
Your friend just said so.
A descriptor? I'm Bana. I'm
No,
a
not like
badass.
It's not a singles meeting. Okay. A broad-shouldered, towering mountain of a woman walks into the bar, bearing on her back a massive iron weapon of death. At its peak, it splits into two ends, flaring out like wings in an ornate decoration. However, it comes to a very telling, honed point, which lets everyone know as soon as they look upon it that this is a weapon that can certainly bring about the end. However, the ornate decoration and the styling of it lets anyone who sees it also know that this is not your average weapon, and perhaps it bears some special ability. She whips it around in a moment's notice, a look of anger on her features, as she slams it down, and then all at once behind her, two great brown feathered wings like those of a great horned owl erupt in a second, filling the view of this bartender as she towers over him, and she says,
No, I get to drink for free. Your friend just said so.
well, I don't really care what my friend says. He has a tendency to say a lot of things and very few of them make any sense. What are you here for if not to drink?
So Loxley, with her dark, sullen drow features, her icy blue eyes and white hair, flips back her hood and says, sounds like you have more of a training problem, and you owe us a free round.
Okay, well, alright, it looks like it's gonna be assholes from top to bottom today, that's great. I don't know if you think you came into, like, a abandoned building, but this is actually a place of business, and here we conduct transactions usually based on currency. And so, I would actually very much like if you would pay me for the products and services I'm about to provide. This bird over here, I'm not even sure he has a brain. There might be a great vacuum or a void between those two little things that look like ears on the side of his head. They might be just for show, because I don't think he actually knows what the fuck he's talking about.
Geronimo leaps up on the bar and in Loxley's voice says, training problem, and then looks over to them and flashes his vest, which has several shiny objects on it, and then in the voice of the barkeep says, minimum dozen pieces of flair on each employee. And shows his sparkly bits off.
Yes, the only good thing about him is he follows the flair policy.
So while we are getting a glimpse at the flare, Loxley is going to send her mage hand back behind the counter and fill up her drink again.
I'm gonna flip the bird. I'm gonna flip the bird a coin.
You're gonna flip the bird.
The shiniest coin that I have. I'm gonna put my wings away first, but
Okay.
He looks
Go
kind
back
of
away.
sad. He was somewhat impressed by your wingspan, but
and then I'm gonna say apple cider bird.
he bites down with his beak upon the coin to make sure it's real gold, and then looks
No,
at
it's
it.
not gold. It's silver. It's
Oh, with-
the shiniest one I have.
Sorry, make sure it's pure silver, and the softness, it does kind of dig in with the edge of its beak a little bit, and he looks at it, eyes gleaming like, I knew shiny has entered my purchase. He somehow pins it onto his vest, and then goes
Yes.
back and brings forth.
Doesn't go in
What I
your
wanted.
fucking vest, it goes in
Yes.
the fucking tail.
No, it's a tip for that specific individual.
It's payment for a product. Have you never been to a bar before?
He pushes the apple cider towards you and says, water down the drinks again. Water down the drinks again.
You piece of shite, I swear
Yeah,
to
I've paid
God.
for what I got. I'm gonna drink that.
And meanwhile, this hand drifts over with the fully filled cup, just landing beside Loxley.
Now, Loxley, what were we here for?
Loxley, at this point, her slate type colored skin is starting to get a little bit of a flush to it. I think she's about 3 glasses in as this.
Already?
Yes, she don't mess around. Are you kidding me?
He
Watching
turns around, he
this
sees like this
Kenku.
empty glass right in front of you. Where the fuck did you get that shite? God fucking damn it. Alright, I don't know why you two assholes have come in here. I've already got one asshole on my back. I could really use a lot less, actually.
I'm
The ratio
surrounded
here is
by
way off.
Loxley's gonna look at this guy and say, you know, maybe if you charged for drinks, you could get that asshole on your back looked at.
Two charge for drinks.
Geronimo slides down to Loxley at the bar and looks down at her third free drink that she's managed to swipe, and in Bonna's voice winks at her and says, your friend just said I drink for free.
I swear to God, if you drink a single glass, I'm gonna shove it right up your ass.
Well, I'm glad I've had 3 instead of 1 then.
Not you, the bird.
The bird.
Stop mocking me, brog. Stop mocking me, brog. I assume Geronimo has mocked your brogue on several occasions when he's imitated you, just rolling the R's, accentuating it in some way, getting a little crafty with it.
I really wish you would all fuck out of my bar if you don't intend to pay for anything. I think you've all had plenty of free shite, and I think this whole exchange is over now. Now, Bird, if you could give me that silver, at least then I would leave this conversation without having to fucking slit your throat.
He unpins the silver and flicks it over, over the head of his patron, and as he bumbles for it, he quickly slips a small note under the glass that Loxley is drinking from, and gives her another wink. "Friend," he says in Bonna's voice, and walks away.
Takes the silver, puts it in the till. You hear just like the saddest limited clinking ever as this till closes, just chunk. Like there's nothing in there. Turns to the Bird. Well, now you're down one piece of flair, so you need to go find a piece of flair. There's a gap on your sweater. Don't ever listen to the fucking boss. All right, ladies, if you don't intend to spend any more money here, I think we're done.
Well, that's fine. And at this point, Loxley's already got another glass that she's drinking.
Walking out with.
He's gonna like grab the glass, and fight the mage hand. Like, no, this is not for free.
I was gonna say if you were gonna fight me for the mage hand, or fight me for the glass, I was gonna send my mage hand back to either like raid the register or steal shiny things.
Geronimo thinks
give
this
him to
is
the bird.
hilarious, but his laughter is the barkeep's laughter, which is coming out of this little bird, so he's laughing at him with his own voice.
I'm gonna make a scarf out of you.
He looks at you quizzically, head tilted to the side.
I'm gonna make the most beautiful feather boa out of you.
And as they continue fighting, you two ladies find your opportunity to exit away carefully.
From whatever dysfunctional relationship that is.
I want to save that bird.
Oh no, she's invested
I want to
emotionally.
obviate that freaking bartender.
I want a minor illusion or mirror image and make tons of copies of that bird and leave it there for the bartender.
His own personal hell.
Yeah, listen, he's already in his own personal
But what does the note say?
The note,
the information you need to continue this adventure.
it
Oh,
absolutely
excellent,
does.
perfect.
It, in fact, gives
We
you the
did it.
information about the Thieves Guild that you were looking for.
Indeed. Sometimes kindness is the only answer you needed. And sometimes the quest is the friends you made along the way.
Take me home tonight.
But, great job. Just,
Oh, that does. You stop right now.
I mean, you had to do that in real time. You had no preparation. You were keeping up phrases.
I think
Great job,
it
bud.
really speaks to. I was trying to follow the exact advice you were giving, which was, what can a Kenku do? So having a character that they are already familiar with and can then ape mannerisms and parts of their voice and their speech makes it really easy, because then I don't have to be this character. I just have to be bits of that character, whatever works.
Again, getting back to that improv element of Dungeons and Dragons is yes-anding your partner. You were creating elements of my character by telling me things that my character had said, and I can't say no because that breaks the fiction of the world. So now my character has to be the kind of guy who would do those things. So I have this angry asshole bartender who just makes his employees wear flair, and I yes and that, and I roll with that because it's funny. It's funnier that way. So yes-anding your players is very important. If they introduce an element to the scenario and it makes it funnier without breaking it, just roll with it. Why not?
And then I tried to, I think less successfully, because it's definitely the harder thing to do, and it's my kudos to Matt Mercer because he made his Kenku do only this, trying to pick out parts and keeping in your working memory things that other players have recently said that you can then pick up on.
Well, the important thing to note about Matt Mercer and the way he was using his Kenku is that he was, as his players were role-playing, he was taking notes while they were controlling the scene. He wasn't actively in the scene writing down things and then regurgitating them that often. Most of the time, he was, while they were talking in a totally different, unrelated to Kiri scene, he was taking notes and then bringing that back later. So really, you can't be expected to do what he did in 5 minutes. you would need to have been playing for 2 hours so that you could have that history of comments that you could be putting down. Because nobody can DM a session and take notes on what the players are saying and regurgitate what the players are saying back to them at the same time. You have to make space for that to make it effective, and that's what was really impressive about Mercer's performance. But what you were doing was, in my opinion, just as or more impressive, because you were doing it on the fly while running the scenario and trying to work us towards a satisfying conclusion in a limited amount of time.
Well, thank you, Jay. I had fun doing it, and I always have fun when the F-list characters get up to trouble. So
I do think that we learned a lot about their relationship.
yeah,
The things
yeah.
that air, as Kenku said.
Yeah, Geronimo constantly like referencing things this guy has said before, probably not in front of the patrons, is a great way to be like. It's a classic comedy shtick, right? Of the innocent voice giving off hidden secrets. I didn't say that. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
almost have to play it like a toddler. Because they're going to pick up what they want to say, and
Yep.
probably going to say it at a bad time later.
Yeah, I think that a Kinku presents a restriction to your normal style of play. It presents a challenge. But if your goal is to make yourself a better role player, a more engaged and active part of your world, I don't think there's a better race to play than Kinku. Because when you're playing a Kinku, you're having to get phrases from other players, and you're having to, so that you can communicate. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're not engaged at the table. So if your goal is to improve your role play, to be more engaged at the table, and to take on a challenge that you haven't really played before in Dungeons & Dragons, I think Kinku could be the perfect race for you. So crack open your Volo's Guide and check out Monstrous Races, because I think this one is a very special one. And it's finally getting the attention it deserves.
You may already have this monster inside you and not even know it.
I want to say that one of the things that I know Haley and I have talked about is she's like, I'm not as quick in the moment. I take a more, like, she said she takes a more thoughtful and studied approach. She wants to think about and mull over what she's going to say, and I think a Kenku might be a good fit for a player who doesn't want to have like the snappy retort or whatnot. The player who wants to like really study the party and the other characters and take copious notes. So even though quantitatively they aren't saying as much, when they have the perfect statement from another player for the perfect moment, they can get in there and have that really big effect. You know, they're the silent Bob of the group. They don't talk often, but when they do, it's poignant.
Yeah, like Taliesin Jaff in Critical Role. The king of one-liners.
You don't pronounce the E shit.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this week's episode of Insight Check. We would love to extend our thanks to Vinswept for our intro and outro music, Never Stand Alone, and the beautiful and talented Amy T. Falcone.
Now taking commissions.
Now taking commissions. She has been live on the Twitch.
And then check Haley's Twitter, because she got one from her for her lovely flower child, Via. And it looks awesome.
Yes, but thank you to Amy T. Falcone for our social media branding. Her artwork is amazing. You guys can catch up with her on the Twitter. If you would like to have your questions answered and get that quick little shout out, you can at us at Insight Check Pod or hashtag Insight Check, and we will get those juicy cues. If you wouldn't mind taking just a quick moment and rating and reviewing us on the iTunes, we would greatly appreciate it. We love your input, and it helps give us direction when we are otherwise directionless.
You are the wind beneath our wings, listeners. We love everyone.
Indeed.
And to that end, answering your cues from our collective A's, this
Was
Insight.
Check.
the fun times on the East Coast.
The right coast. I don't know.
Listen, this is we've seen how this plays out before, and it ends in the deaths of rap greats. So let's not bear that out anymore, because there's only so many of us in this current chat who do rapping.
That's right. If we were to lose a core rapper, there's not a huge selection.
This is probably why he's lifting.
Yes, exactly. He's got to get that badass gangster bod so that I know not to step.
So, Air, do you have a...
Nope, not a thing. I just
All
wanted
right.
to talk about muscles.